Now these are the largest storks that we get in this area, and I mentioned earlier that the fish eagle might be feeling a little bit put out by their presence. And Dennis in Massachusetts, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You've said that you've seen or heard of fish eagles preying on flamingos and assumed that maybe they would be bold enough to steal fish from the marabous. And I wouldn't be surprised, I think it was with Scott actually, that the fish eagle swooped in and stole a tilapia kill from one of the saddle-billed storks, who were quite often seen around this dam, and snatched it right away from him and then promptly dropped it in the pond. It was actually an amazing sighting. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was such a surprise as well.
So cool.
We had no idea the fish eagle was here.
Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't put it past a sneaky fish eagle. And they've definitely got a little bit of speed over these big marabou storks. I wouldn't call them clumsy, but they're definitely not as mobile as a fish eagle would be. They haven't had much interest in the barbel though, that I've seen. I don't know if any of the viewers have seen them catching any.
Look there, Jamie.
Dribbling.
Yeah.
He's having a bit of a drink there. Did it drink water or did it just expel that?
I'm not sure if it managed to drink there. I don't think it would have been. I think it may have expelled it out of the pouch.
That was interesting. So, the stork on the left, all of a sudden there was a fountain of water coming from its mouth. And I know that a lot of birds will use the crop to store liquid and then regurgitate it to their chicks if their nests are built far away from access to water. So that's one extra use of that rather large crop that these marabou storks have. Oh, and you could even hear his bill snap there as he shook his head. That was very cool. Has told us that it is connected to one of the stork's nostrils, and it's used as a sort of a resonance device in creating sounds that are then used as part of the breeding rituals to help them court their mates. And thank you very much for that, Bob. It's really interesting information. I've definitely learned something new today. That's amazing. I love the idea of them using that as a resonance chamber. Birds that we've seen at the dam. There is a camera, for those of you who don't know, there is a live camera that operates 24 hours a day over this waterhole and is controlled by a very dedicated group of zoomies. You can change its direction and zoom in when there's something fascinating to see. And it also comes with a microphone. Now Lewis has picked up on a bird call that he describes as a sonar ping, and was wondering if we could tell him what it is. Now my suspicion would be that it was a scops owl. If it sounds, Lewis, if it sounds like sort of a sound, and there are probably about 3 of them living up at Quarantine. We hear them every single night. And I know that there's quite a few of us who are desperate to find one live. Scott, I think we should do that this evening as the sun goes down. We'll go find that scops owl.
Sounds good.
Yeah. No, we've definitely been aiming to show you guys. It's the smallest little owl that we get out here. And Lewis, if I had to take a shot in the dark, that would be mine. I'm trying to think what other... The thickneys, so the other nocturnal species of bird around here, they don't really sound like sonar pings. Their calls are too often and too irregular. Definitely wouldn't be a Verreaux's. That's a very deep, so a Verreaux's eagle owl is out. Definitely isn't a barn owl, because that's a scream and a screech. And it isn't a pearl-spotted owl, because they do a beautiful little musical descent of whistles. So not one constant sound. And that would be my guess. Scott, I don't know if you have any.
No.
No, I think scops owl is probably the most likely. And I would very much like to find one of those.
A Mozambican nightjar makes a long... But I haven't heard them yet.
I haven't heard them yet.
But that's not really a sonar ping.
No, that's just a constant trill. Very interesting. So in case we don't find it, in case we do not find it for you, Lewis, this afternoon, I'm going to show you a picture of what one looks like. Now, Lewis, that is what we suspect your sonar ping bird is. It's a tiny, tiny little owl that always looks particularly grumpy and displeased to see whoever happens to be looking at it. But that is the bird that we're talking about, the pearl-spotted owl. This is the most common colouring. You also get a slightly more brown version. And if I were to... This is the other little owl that we get, pearl-spotted owlet. Ever so slightly bigger, but ever so slightly. And easily told apart from the scops owl. First of all, it doesn't have the little ear tufts, which are not actually ears, but they are feather tufts. And it's also got these cute little spots on the back of its head. And then the other little owl, which is even bigger still, is the African barred owlet, which the only other one you could confuse it with is the pearl-spotted owl, because it doesn't have the tufts like the scops owl. But it is slightly bigger still, and the chest barring is a little bit darker, and it doesn't have those eye patches on the back. So those are the three tiny owls. I know that we've showed both African barred owlets and pearl-spotted owlets on live. I don't think we've managed to get a scops yet, so we'll have a bit of a look this afternoon or this evening. They are crepuscular, which means that they come out during the sort of sunset time and early morning. We'll get to start to hear them call. We'll try and make it back to quarantine and see if we can track them down and find them for you. And just to give you a rough idea as to size, I'd say probably maybe that big. They are tiny, tiny little owls. Really, really cute. And made even cuter by their grumpy expressions. And I think our marabou storks have settled down, and we have explained, or at least had various theories, as to the large crop pouch. The pendulous pouch, I love that. It's a beautiful illustration. Wonderfully described by the author of my bird book. And hopefully they will stick around for a little bit longer over the next few days, and we'll get to observe their behavior. Now, this is fairly unusual for me, at least, in my time at Wild Earth. I haven't often seen marabou storks around here, and nature is beautiful, is really, really enjoying their presence, and was wondering if I could tell a little bit more about them, as how long they live, and how many chicks can they have. Now, I'd have to double check my research. I would say that there is only one chick. They probably lay 2 eggs, as is quite common with most of the larger bird species, especially the birds of prey and the carnivore species. I would say that they have laid 2 eggs, but that one will hatch first, and the second one will either be out-competed completely by its older sibling, or in some cases even picked and bullied to the point that it dies. I would say they only raise 1 chick at a time. I could be wrong about that, but that would be my guess. And then in terms of how long they live or what their lifespan is, I'm guessing they are fairly long-lived birds. I would even put it in the region of somewhere 15. Scott, I don't know if you know exactly, but I'm guessing I would say 15 or so, maybe even older.
Yeah, easily, I would say easily older.
We get raptors that can live 20, 25 years quite easily. And although these are storks, they are very large and probably quite long-lived birds. That would be my guess, but I'm sure there are many of you out there who do know the answer to that. And as always, you can send that through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarth.tv. Ian tells me that there was a case in Parfuri of a fish eagle catching a young baboon. So very, very opportunistic bird. And even though their name is fish eagle, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are just stuck catching fish, although that is what they are specially adapted for. Now, from the catfish in the mud at Djuma Dam to a rather larger animal species, I believe that James has a hippo at Twin Dams, which is certainly a first for me. So we'll head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome back to Wendy, where I am sitting at Twin Dams, but I am not alone. There is a hippopotamus here in conditions that I would never have thought possible. It's lying in the mud, and initially I thought was possibly stuck, but doesn't, according to Tex, whose voice you can probably hear from the other side, it isn't. He reckons that it's just come here to rest up and stay cool and parasite free here in the mud. Now, 2 days ago, Brian and I were on drive searching the I nearly said wastelands, but searching the cold front strewn areas of Djuma, and we didn't find anything, except we did go past a pan on Hyena Road, which is not too far from here, and there was a hippo lying in a very tiny little pan, roughly the same size as the one that I did my first introduction on at 3 o'clock today, 3:30, and I think it's probably the same hippo. It'll be a non-territorial bull who's been chased out of a pod by the dominant bull, and he'll be looking to try and find some kind of solace here where he can find a bit of water. Now, having said that, there was a bit of movement there, and it didn't exactly look like it was a movement that made you think the hippo could get out of that mud. And I will tell you that I have walked through that mud, of course, in an attempt to catch a catfish, failing, naturally, and it's very deep and very sticky. And animals do get mired in the mud sometimes. Elephants, especially in some areas where there's severe water stress, will get stuck in the mud. But I'm not sure what's going on with this hippo. Because hippo are so experienced in the water, you'd be surprised, I think, to find a hippo that was stuck in the mud. So I don't really know. Remember, hippo are very sensitive to the sun, and while it's been a fairly cool day, there hasn't been much cloud about, and so the sun has shone for most of the day, and so hippos will always seek to try and find some kind of escape from the harsh rays of the sun. And I must say, just on that topic, I was in Greece a little while back, and it was amazing to me how, even though I often forgot to put on any sunscreen, the sun there and in Europe, possibly in North America as well, just didn't seem to have the same effect as it does here at the latitude that we are here in the Lowveld and possibly in Africa. It's just much harsher. So for those of you who haven't been out here and experienced a summer sun, although the temperature is about, the temperature feels the same, 34 degrees wherever you are in the world, the sun does tend to feel a lot harsher out here than it does at more northerly climes. Beautiful light starting to fall on the Lowveld now as the sun begins to sink down below the Drakensberg, and quite unusually chilly. I think we're still experiencing the tail end of that cold front. So I would say a young bull, and it looks to me like he's going to sleep, which is nice for him. It's good to have an afternoon nap, don't you think, Brian? Yes, his eyes are drooping, exhausted after a day of lying in the mud. This, of course, gave rise to the Flanders and Swan song, Mud, Glorious Mud. I think this should probably also conclusively show. Sorry everybody, I'm just having a little bit of radio trouble here. Excuse me 1 second. Was that for me? Beautiful atmosphere. There's the golden setting sun, which we'll show you just now. There's the hippo and the last calling of a number of daytime birds. Some doves. Quite a lot of quietness actually. A couple of crickets are starting to call. And of course what we must listen out for is what Jamie has challenged us with. She said we're going to try and find a Scops owl live, and the challenge is to be the first person to find a live Scops owl. Scops owl, of course, is tremendously camouflaged. Brian, are you wanting to show the sun or my mug? Oh, you're coming for me. Sorry about that. I was being athletic there, getting out of the way, but there is the sun just in front of me that is about to set over the beautiful African horizon. Something I never ever get sick of, I must say. I find it inspirational every time I see it. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, if you're clever enough, you can have 2 or 3 sunsets. You start off low down like we are now, and you go up a bit and you can have another one, and then right to the far western end of the property, and you can watch it sinking over the Drakensberg. I'm not convinced myself that this hippo isn't stuck, so it will be interesting to see tomorrow whether he is still here or not. But we shouldn't drive down that way. Brian, what do you think? We'll just drive around next to the water and see if we can't get a better idea. Hold on tight, everyone. We're about to go plummeting off this wall. Oh, there's an oxpecker on him, you see that? There's an oxpecker reclining gently on his head. There he is, a red-billed oxpecker looking for ticks. And of course, the big thing about oxpeckers is that they don't have ticks. They don't eat ticks because they like ticks. They eat ticks because they like blood. And And a couple of you who watch the Djuma Dam cam have made the comment that there has been a hippo at Djuma waterhole the last few nights. Chamala, apparently, I think that's how we say your name. And Chris, you say there was a hippo there, and perhaps it was the same one. I think it may well be the same one. You know, we find their tracks going up and down the road between the two waterholes quite a lot. One of them, the road is called Twin Dams Road, and so often we do see that. So I think we'll sit with him for another few minutes and then we'll press on and see what else we can see. But just to give you an idea of hippo social structure and how a young bull like this eventually becomes a big breeding bull that will supply new hippos to the population. Basically, he will have to achieve full size. Now, he's probably about 2/3 as full big bull size. Big bull weighs as much as a white rhino, so they weigh up to 2,500 kilograms, which is about 6,500 pounds, so enormous animals. And he at this stage will be just, there's so many mammals that go through this stage of loneliness as young males trying to gain their full size, and eventually he will go off and take a pod of his own and hopefully maintain a territory in a pristine area like the Sand River. That's good hippo territory because it doesn't dry out much, and he'll then have some babies of his own, and they're not seasonal breeders at all. They're pretty non-seasonal.
Okay, can we no taller. Good.
Right, everybody, I think we should leave this young fellow to himself. And while we drive away, please feel free to continue sending questions about him, but he's just not doing a great deal, so I think we'll carry on and see what else we can see. We'll try. Of course, we might get stuck. Brian, what I find is it's important to push the accelerator when you want to drive as opposed to the brake.
No, very
yes,
nice.
that does help.
A good tip.
Yes. So, inevitably, you have asked, a few of you, Christine, Angela and Jody specifically, about whether we would help him if he was stuck. Chaps, or would we leave him to his fate? I think because this is a man-made dam, an anthropogenic effect would have caused him to be stuck. We'd probably try and help him. The thing is with a hip,
Oh dear, we seem to have lost James, but we are back with you guys. Now, I'm sure that James will be back up and running soon. For those of you who were with us for the sunrise safari, it seems as though the gremlins are following Wendy in particular. Now, we're on a mission. This morning, James and Scott were desperately looking for those Birmingham boys, or we believe it to be the Birmingham boys. They had tracks of them up and down Triple M and then across Rebecca's Road. What we want to do is be in the position of the last tracks just around sort of sunset as it starts to get dark. The sun's just popped itself down over the horizon. We're going to go check all the way down Impala Road and see if we can't catch those Birmingham boys calling. Scott and myself, just after the sunrise safari, we went out looking once again to the position of the last tracks, and we scoured the block. But it is a very, very big block, and it's also full of monkey orange. It could be that they were flat out and asleep, that we walked right past them. Now we're trying to figure out what they've been up to and where they're going, especially in response to all of that calling from the salati males yesterday and last night. Now we chatted a little bit yesterday evening on Fireside Chat about why we think it is that all of a sudden the Salatis have pushed down and made an appearance into Djuma, which to the best of my knowledge is probably certainly the first time it's happened since I've started working here. Now Tricia, you were wondering if the Birmingham boys would ever accept the Salati males into their coalition. And I would say that's an absolutely not. You should never talk in absolutes out here, but I would say that would be highly, highly unlikely. Now, the Salatis are in their prime. I saw clips of them with Scott. I saw them very briefly yesterday. They are absolutely enormous. They're very, very experienced males. They have competed and done the... Yep. Scott's just spotted something. No way. Hold on a minute. Oh, I think it's an African bard. Oh, but he is beautiful. Here you go, one of the little owls that we were talking about. And you can see what I mean. It looks like a pearl spotted now that I'm looking at it. Looks like it's got those eye patches on the back. That was a brilliant spot, Scott.
Thanks very much.
Oh, that was very fortuitous, having just had that conversation about the little owls that we see out here. You can see he also looks fairly grumpy. I think that's just his resting face, his neutral expression, but they always do look a little bit furious to see us. Now these little owls are really, really good at ambushing larger insects. So they specialize in catching the big crickets and so on that come out at night. And you'll see them dive bomb out of trees. I've had some of them land maybe 2 or 3 meters away from where I've been sitting in the evenings. Very, very cute. Just to give you guys an idea of how tall that bird is, probably somewhere in the region of 20 centimeters. And if you give my brain a moment to do some conversions, that is just under 10 inches in height. What's that, 2.5 centimeters to an inch? Yeah. It's under 10 inches in height. There you can see how really, really tiny it is. Beautifully silhouetted against that night sky. And if we look at it like that, in that shot, you can see what an amazing spot it was from Scott sitting on the back there. Just perched out on the limb of a silver cluster leaf. That does mean we're still on a mission to find the Scops owls that have been residing. Oh! Quick poo. And all of these little owlets are, as I mentioned, crepuscular. So this is the exact time of day where they are most active, out and about, catching mostly insects, maybe some of the smaller rodents, but even that would be quite a challenge for a little bird like this. It only weighs a couple of grams. Very, very light and totally silent. Now, unfortunately, there is a vehicle behind me. I'm going to have to just shift out of his way so that he can move past. Oh, he seems content to wait for now. You can sit here for a little longer with a very cute little bird. One of the things that makes these owls so incredibly silent is the fringes on the edges of their flight feathers. So their flight feathers are sort of chopped up and broken, not extremely, but just enough to break or to sort of disrupt the airflow as it goes over their wings, and it just makes it that little bit quieter. You don't get the flapping sound that you pick up from some of the other birds. It's nice to just sit and enjoy the sounds of the African bush as we start to go into evening. I was sort of hoping that he might give us a bit of a call. You can hear a magpie shrike or a long-tailed shrike off in the distance making that beautiful whistle. And these little owls are hugely territorial, and they do call to each other to let each other know that they are in the area, which is why you've always got to be very careful when you're imitating their calls, because you can get them to respond and they will come right up to you. But if you do it too loud or too often, they might think that there's a bigger, scarier owl of that species, and you could actually scare them away. Now there's still some debate as to which owl this is, and originally I said I went from barred to pearl spotted, and now I'm going back to barred again. When he turns his head, he doesn't have those clear eye spots on the back. It was quite difficult to see because he's really in silhouette, but I don't see the clear eye spot patterns. So for those of you who are debating, Deb and Lisa, I'm going to go with an African barred owlet. He doesn't have that much white on his stomach either, as the pearl spotters do. He's got quite heavy barring on his chest and on his stomach, which makes me think African barred owlet. He is very heavily in the silhouette of the sunset. And speaking of sunsets, I believe that Brent, who is out on bushwalk, would very much like to share his view of the sunset with you. And for now, we're going to cross across to him. We're going to continue our search for the Birmingham boys. And Trisha, I will get back to your question when we do have the opportunity. But for now, let's see what Brent is seeing.
Three. Surprise! Hello and welcome on the Sunset Bushwalk. Sorry, my name is Brent Leo Smith. Unfortunately, this is just going to be a very short cameo link. The African sun is setting behind us. Jandre and I have been out tracking the Birmingham boys. We have had their tracks going through the bush. It is getting a little bit late in the afternoon to continue tracking them, so we're going to jump back on the vehicle and see if we can find them popping up on the other side of the drainage line where we lost the tracks. So fingers crossed that before the end of the drive we'll be able to find some lines. Unfortunately not on foot, but hopefully able to find them from the vehicle. So just a quick hello while we're testing out the equipment, trying to get rid of all the kinks, so we'll be able to have bushwalks more regularly. So from Jandre and myself, just a quick hello, and I hear you had a wonderful pearl spotted owl sighting with Jamie. We have sun and bees, but just to let you know, we're working on the bushwalk, and we will be continuing to work on the bushwalk. so he'll be up and running shortly. So from us out here on foot in the African bush, adieu, and hopefully we'll see you in the morning.
Welcome back, and we've had a beautiful view of the sunset, but it's now time to do some serious animal searching. Our little owl has headed off. We just had to pull off the road quickly for some passing vehicles who are on their way to the gate. Now let's continue our search for the Birmingham boys. And whilst I did enjoy my brief moment with you, I believe that James now has something to show you, so we will continue our search for the Birmingham boys alone, and James will be with you in just a few minutes. We'll catch up with you later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we have found a hornbill with the munchies. He is extremely hungry, been eating here for the entire time that you've been with Brent, and for some of the time you were with Jamie. And I don't know if you can hear, we'll try and turn the sound up a bit for you. You can hear the crunching noise. So eating out probably the big soldier termites that are making the crunching sound, and the others that he's just chucking down his throat are other ones that he's just, sorry, I'm just trying to turn this noisy camera radio down. The other ones that he's just swallowing are probably the workers, quite soft shelled and not as hard as the adults. And as Brian pointed out to me, it looks like he actually cracked that termite mound open. You can see all the dirt from next to it, and he somehow probably figured out that this is where, maybe he just opened a hole up that was there already and made it a bit bigger. But I suspect that they can probably sense if the termites are close to the surface, and with that spectacular yellow-orange beak, he's able to open up the surface and catch the termites. You can see the droppings from various other birds all over the top of the mound there. So lots of termites have come. Lots of hornbills have come to sup on the termites here. There we go, I got it right eventually, Brian, sorry about that. And it's a beautiful evening. The sun has now set over the mountains, and in fact, while I was driving up this cut line, I became so inspired by the evening that I started to sing at the top of my voice some of the soundtrack from The Lion King. And unbeknownst to me, I thought we were alone in the wilderness, Brian and I, but we went past a drink stop from Cheetah Plains with some very confused looking people staring at what on earth was coming past them. So that just gives you an idea of how magnificent this evening is. It inspired me to sing at the top of my voice. A couple of crested francolins calling. Just a beautiful, relaxed atmosphere around the place. There's not a lot of noise other than for the crested francolins and the gentle crunching of those termites as they go down the gullet of that beautiful yellow-billed hornbill. And also in the distance, a red-crested korhaan. Hornbill didn't like that. Right, so I'll tell you where we are, everybody. Whoops, that's my head in the way. We are on the Cheetah cut line, which means we're to the far east of Djuma. Just came here to see if we could find some tracks of something or other. We haven't found any tracks of anything, so we're just going to continue north up here, see what we can pick up, pop into Buffelshoek Dam and see what's there. Unless anybody has a better idea, in which case I'm more than open ears for it. Just some Cokie Franklins calling there. Cokie, 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 Cokie. Onomatopoeic name. Lots of birds have got onomatopoeic names. Sorry, Mr. Hornbill. You can come back if we disturb you. Sorry about that. You can also see that I'm now wearing a jersey, and I'm wearing this jersey because obviously it's become a bit cold, so I think we are still feeling the remnants of that cold front. And just before you left us, we were having a discussion about the hippo. I forget exactly what it was about the hippo we were discussing. Do you remember, Brian? Oh yes, we were discussing whether we would intervene or not if the hippo got stuck in the mud. Now the general rule, everybody, is that if there is an anthropogenic, i.e. human-made injury or difficulty or stress to an animal, then we will help out. And if it is a natural stress, or unless the animal is endangered, we would leave it alone. Now that hippo is in a dam, which is, of course, is man-made. That kind of mud would not be in that area were it not for that dam, and so I think we would probably try and help him out. Certainly, like I said, with elephants, that often there are elephant areas. Malawi and Zimbabwe and Botswana.
Welcome back, and we just had to bring you across to have a look at the gorgeous silhouette of the giraffes that we did have just one moment ago. What I'm going to do is scoot forward. We've got the beautiful view of the Drakensberg mountain and the setting sun. Now let's see if we have one more opportunity to add a giraffe silhouette to the list. On the move. Get a little bit ahead of them. Hello Impala, you're here too. There for a moment. I think they're going to continue moving. But how cool is that? That is such an awesome, typically African image. With the thorns in the back and that beautiful silhouette of a large male giraffe. Really, really cool. Can even see his eyelashes. Beautiful African sunset image. I just need to get onto the Game Drive channel briefly so I can chat to Brent. He is calling us. Yeah, Brent's standing by. Brent for Jamie. Copy that, thanks Brent. We were actually on our way back to that area to follow up. We're on Impala Road now. I'll also head in that direction. Now, it seems as though once again Brent has picked up the tracks that we were desperately looking for earlier today of the Birmingham boys. They seem to be crossing Rebecca Road and towards the western edge of Quarantine. So we may well end up on Quarantine after all. We can have a look at the Birmingham boys and, if we're really, really lucky, even a little Scops owl. I think we better hit the road. It is getting late. Let's see what we can find. And as we leave these giraffe, there are a couple of questions about baby giraffe. So, Djuma, you were wondering if there are any baby giraffe around because you haven't seen that many. And yes, there definitely are. I've seen a couple of really tiny ones. Nothing on any recent live drives though. And Heidi, you were wondering if giraffe will have babies once a year. And it will actually be more than once a year. Their gestation period alone is over a year. And they will continue to suckle their calves for a couple of months. There will be, although they don't have a specific breeding season, we will definitely start to see more giraffe now as we enter the rainy season. As with most animals out here that don't have that specific month where they give birth, you will always see a sort of peak towards the time of the year when there's a lot of rain and a lot more nutrients available for the mothers to feed both themselves and for those very rapidly growing and developing calves. Hopefully we will catch one or two on the live safaris very soon. And I love baby giraffe. Actually no, I did see one. I saw one fairly recently with the wildebeest on camera. And it was so tiny it still had the umbilical cord on its stomach, sort of dried out and a little bit older, but probably only about a week old. Scott and myself have quite the mission to go on, and we need to be in constant communication with Brent to see if we can split our or divide our labour, so to speak, and split up the search and organise all of that. I'm going to race across in that direction. So in the meantime, we're going to see what James has to show you and to tell you about, and we'll catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with those Birminghams with us.
Finished. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. We are now on the Biffles Hook cut line, just to the northern side of Djuma. Sorry, I was just listening quietly. Now Patty, sorry, you're going to lose us briefly here as we go through this dip because there is some bad signal. Fear not, when we pop out the other side, I will continue answering this question. From Patty in Michigan, who is about to make the long trip, the long trek over to Africa, to our very backyard here in the Sabi Sands. And Patty, you would like a task for while you are here, because you say you only don't, I forget exactly what you said, but you said something about only not knowing what you don't know. Something about that, like that. Anyway, I'm going to go through this dip, and then I'm going to give you a task, Patty, which you will take very seriously while you are here. Your task is as follows. I would like you, if you wouldn't mind, here are some buffalo. Let us look at the buffalo while I give Patty her task. Some beefies. A herd of bulls. A herd of bull buffaloes They don't seem to be in a herd. So Patty, while we look at these buffalo, your task is going to be, please, to try and keep an accurate bird list. Now I think that will be interesting. I mean, I hope you like birds. If you don't, then you're welcome to tell me that my task is poor and you'd like another one. But when you come out here in the next little while, the birds are starting to arrive back now from their wintering grounds in various parts of the world. And I think it'd be fascinating to see how many birds your ranger can show you in the time that you're here. I'd also quite like to know, Patty, where in the Sabi Sands you're going. It would be fascinating to know. So some bulls, buffalo bulls on their own, probably having left the herd that did come through here a little while back, or having come from the waterhole. I just don't know which waterhole they would have come from. So possibly old boys and possibly some marginal bulls who've come off the herd that was recently in this area. They're chewing their cud, and you could possibly hear just down below us, even though it's still quite chilly today, the cicadas now starting to call. Wonderful sound of cicadas heralding the coming summer. You can hear the odd nightjar calling now. That's the fiery-necked nightjar, often called the litany bird, because apparently it's saying, "Good Lord, deliver us. Good Lord, deliver us." And you can see, obviously, darkness is now falling on the low veld of magnificent South Africa. And that picture, the light that you've got on that buffalo, is not in reality what we have here. The camera is producing that remarkable light. Yeah, I think these are old bulls that have probably come out of a dam somewhere nearby, probably on Buffelshoek, and they're just grazing along the fire break here. You can see that there are very few trees around where we are here, and that's because it's a clearing made for fighting fires, should fires come. We're out of the danger zone in the fire season now because we've had our first 20 millimeters of rain, and generally that spells the end of the fire season. But they'll like it because it's open and they can see what's going on. Beautiful color there, you can see. Gorgeous little orange stripe across the blue sky there. Right, I think we'll move forward now. The end of the road, if you just, Brian, why don't you zoom into the end of the road if you wouldn't mind, is that inviting, it's kind of it just invites you to go and look over the edge there to see where that amazingly golden honey colored light might lead. Let's go and look, shall we? Isn't that beautiful? It's just so pretty. Marvellous, marvellous, Brian, marvellous. Now, this is going to require a feat of some dexterity. In my right hand I have the radio. To change gears, because there's quite a lot to do with my hands. And that's where I will be signaling to the final control as opposed to trying to talk to them. Or alternatively, I might just let go of the steering wheel and see where Wendy takes us. Is that a good idea, Brian? Something tells me there's a flaw in it, but I can't think what that might be. a while back, in fact probably about 6 weeks ago exactly, we planted an orchid in a tree just near Gowrie Dam, and I haven't been back to check it actually now for about 2 weeks, so I need to go and look. And if it does grow and if it does flower, it will flower at Christmas time, which is a wonderful time for something to flower. Beautiful yellow flowers with round spots. So those of you who are worried about that, I'll go and have a look at some stage. I should go and do it tomorrow, perhaps tomorrow morning. I think I'll be on drive tomorrow morning. Look at that magnificent horizon. I think it might be worth another stop here, Brian. What do you think? You can just see the mountains peeping up there. And I just want to stop and listen here. This is a roundabout where we thought those Salati males possibly went across the boundary yesterday evening. So I wonder if they won't call. It'd be nice to hear them.
Maybe in that small plot there, heading west towards Mapa.
Stunning. And you can hear some francolins calling. You can also hear the ubiquitous cicadas, or what are soon to be, or soon to become ubiquitous cicadas. For our younger viewers, perhaps you don't know what ubiquitous means. It means all around, very common, always seen, always found. Magnificent, magnificent sky. Unfortunately no sound of lions, but there is also the sound of a white-browed scrub robin, which seems to be a little bit confused about the time of day. Beautiful, Brian. Magnificent. Right, let us press on. Turn the side lights on. There we go. The bush is now awash with light. There we go. Change gear with my foot there in just a second. Now we've spoken quite extensively about trees while we've been out here with Brian now in the last few drives. This is mainly due to the absence of predators that we've managed to find, but trees are very interesting things. And Linda, in Canada, you want to know if there are sausage Kigelia africana. Linda, there aren't any sausage trees here. It's because we're not really wet enough. They tend to grow much more along riverbanks and perennial rivers, and that's where you'll find sausage trees. So because there are no perennial rivers on Djuma, we probably won't find, well, there definitely aren't any sausage trees here. You will find them in the camps though. People plant them, and there where the extra water comes from the camps, they tend to thrive quite nicely. Beautiful tree is a sausage tree, and for those of you who don't know, they produce an enormous pod, seed pod that looks like a big sausage, an enormous brockwurst, perhaps, knockwurst. Ooh, Brian, do you smell death? I smell death. Let us have a listen in the smell.
Jamie and myself were here this morning.
Were you?
She couldn't find where the smell was coming from.
So there is a bit of a smell around here, and Brian, as you may have just heard, saying that he and Jamie smelt it this morning but didn't find its origin. Well, if Jamie couldn't find it during the day, I don't think I'm going to find it at night. Anyway, something has met its end. there was a report later on in the day that a hyena was seen dragging something hapless and very dead into Biffel's Hook this morning, so that's what the smell is. So just back onto the Kigelia africana tree. Linda, you obviously know what it looks like, but for those who don't, it's got an enormous sausage-like dangling pod, and because it is I suppose its shape, it has long been used in Africa as an aphrodisiacal and enhancing medicine, if you like. A cream is made out of the fruit. It's not edible, but it also has beautiful red flowers that are fed upon by bats and in the night. Beautiful red flowers. Now, Jeffrey in Austin, Texas, you say there's a sausage tree near the pump house that we drive by. I haven't seen a sausage tree there. There is. Oh, I'm getting frantic nods from Brian. There is a sausage tree there, Jeffrey. Where? No. Okay, so Jeffrey, that's probably because of the permanent water caused by that borehole. So thank you for pointing that out to me. I feel utterly ashamed that I didn't know that, and you, sitting in Texas, knew that there was a sausage tree next to a pump house that you've never visited before. I'm sorry about that. I shall flagellate myself on arrival home. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. Linda, we do get a sausage tree here at Djuma, as Jeffrey has very kindly pointed out to me. Thank you. What an imbecile I am. Well, I'll try not to. Now, an interesting question while we drive along here, eating things and tracking animals on foot and doing all sorts of things that many people in the world would probably consider suicidally dangerous, which in fact are not. Lyle, you want to know, do you need a special qualification to do what we do? You don't need a special qualification to do precisely what I'm doing now, but you do if you're going to guide people. So for a guide, you definitely need a qualification, and you can do it through various organizations in the country that are certified by the government. It doesn't guarantee you a huge amount, other than the guide has got a general kind of knowledge and has a vague idea of what's going on around big game, but it's certainly a situation that is much better than it was, say, 10 years ago, when there wasn't a regulation saying that you didn't have to have a qualification. You could just get on a vehicle and become a guide. So yes, you do have to have a qualification, Lyle, and there are various places that you can do them around the place. Now, Raisa says there's also a sausage tree around Djuma Waterhole. I don't know about that one, and Brian doesn't either, but Raisa, if you've managed to spot a sausage tree from Finland, from here, I'm probably going to resign tomorrow and go back to the city. But I will go and have a look. And then another question about whether we get baobab trees here. I can comprehensively tell you that we do not get baobab trees here, and any of you who've spotted them from overseas, please don't tell me, because I shall cry myself to sleep. But I'm pretty sure, I'm definitely sure, I'm 100% sure we don't. Don't get baobabs here. We're going to hop across to Jamie, see how her tracking is doing. Tracking in the dark is a
all seems to be very, very quiet here. Still no sign of those Birmingham boys. They were heading in this direction, so I wonder what they're up to. They have shown a propensity for sleeping quite late into the evening. I know that the sightings that I've been with them, they haven't made too much noise until quite a bit later and quite a bit after the sunset. And speaking about lions, and we have chatted a lot about them today, John, you were wondering if there's any news about Junior or the Nkuhumas. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Junior hasn't been seen since he was on that buffalo kill on Simbambili, and the Nkuhumas were on a kill in Torchwood. I haven't heard anything about them today, and of course that's something that we all are really, really interested in, and as soon as we do know, we'll keep you updated on that front. I know that there were lots of guides out in that area this morning and they didn't pick up on anything. I imagine that the calls of the Salati males last night might have pushed the Nkuhumas away from this area. I think that they've had quite enough of new male lion coalitions coming into their area. They might have decided to duck away. And that moon is quite spectacular this evening. Up a little bit in terms of our conversation about lions. Monique from London, welcome to these live safaris. It is great to have you on board with us on the back of our vehicle, and you've heard that the Birmingham boys had killed and partially eaten a couple of lionesses, and we're wondering if this is a common behavior or if it is unusual. It does seem rather gruesome. It is indeed. It is not unheard of. I would not call it common, but it is not unheard of. I know that the Mapochos of a couple of years ago, a big male coalition, they were actually quite famous for eating or partially eating the lions that they had killed. And I think it's partly a way of displaying dominance once they have killed a lion. But also partly we must remember that they are not bound by human rules. They are wild animals, and they are opportunistic. And the lion is a possible meal and possible sustenance for them. But it isn't something that they regularly go around doing. Now, you will have noticed as we were looking at the night sky, there were lots of bats flying around. Not seeing them as much anymore, but there were lots of bats fluttering around as Scott was giving us that beautiful shot of the evening sky. And RC, you were wondering if I could ID the bats. Now, just judging by their size, because they are quite large, I would go with one of the species of fruit-eating bat. They're much, much bigger than the insect eaters. There are so many different species of bat. I'm just desperately racking my brains for the most common one. Scott, I don't know if you can...
The epauletted fruit bat you do get here, but not very commonly. And that's the largest one that we may have been seeing.
Okay, so Scott is saying the largest one we might see is the epauletted fruit bat. There's one just in the back of my brain somewhere that I'm thinking of, but I honestly cannot remember the name, RC. So I do apologize. I'll have to go and brush up on my bat species. But I would definitely go with one of the fruit eating, so the Megaroptera family of fruits, family of bats, rather than the Microptera, which is the small insect eating bats. Now, as we're sitting and enjoying a wonderfully silent night, we're still waiting to hear from the Birmingham boys, and I know we are all at Ingers and DRC eagerly waiting to see if they do start to call in response to the Salatis challenge from last night. It has been a wonderful afternoon, and I do say a big thank you to all of you viewers for all of your help, and especially all of the information on the marabou stalks, which was absolutely fascinating. And a big thank you to Scott, who with his cameo as a cameraman, once again, it is great to have him on board with us, and also just to contribute to those little tidbits that I don't necessarily know just yet. And wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful evening. We're going to send you back across to James, and I will catch up with you tomorrow for the sunrise safari. Cheers for now.
Hello everybody, welcome back to this magnificent evening that is just showing us that quite astonishing view of the sickle, well not even sickle yet, sliver of moon, beautiful moon, which of course gave us a 79% solar eclipse in the southern parts of Africa yesterday, and in Madagascar of course, which some people consider Africa and some people do not. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap as to what happened today for some of our new viewers, and for perhaps new viewers who weren't part of. I'm going to turn this other radio off first before I do that. Perhaps you weren't with us earlier on during the drive, perhaps you've just joined us, you've just left work, or you're in a meeting. So what happened was, earlier today, Madiba, aka Sindile, aka Shadow's cub, caught a domestic dog, took it into a tree. There was great consternation. Brent went over there, not knowing it was a dog. He thought he'd caught a steenbok. Obviously, as soon as he got there, he realized it was a dog, and well, so our viewers saw that. Now, there was a lot of consternation on Twitter about it, whether we should have showed it or whether we shouldn't have showed it. We did show it in the end, and we're very sorry if it did affect any of our sensitive viewers. Anyway, I thought I would just explain quickly again why it is that happened and how it came to pass that it happened. So, on the western boundaries of the Kruger National Park, there are 9 million people. Most of them live in abject poverty, and that means that from time to time there is the odd poaching incursion. Now, please understand that to come into an area like this and poach an animal for the pot is a very difficult thing to do, and it's not something that anybody, I know I've done extensive research in the communities outside of this reserve, it's not something that anybody does rather than go to the shops and buy something to eat. It's difficult, it's dangerous, and it's just not a lot of fun. And so those dogs may have been poaching dogs. I suspect they probably were, and that's how they got into the reserve, I suspect. Anyway, that's just the way it happens to be out here. Leopards are known for their ability to take domestic dogs in all parts of the world, and that's what little Madiba did. Now, the great thing about this is that we were very worried about what was going to happen to Madiba. The dog was dispatched by the Sabi Sands, as has to happen with any dog that makes an incursion onto the reserve because of disease that could come from domestic areas where there are no veterinary services. And if the dog does test positive for a disease, especially rabies, what will happen is that Madiba will be darted, he will be inoculated, and he will carry on with his life. We were very worried that that wouldn't be the case and that perhaps Madiba would have to be destroyed, but that is not going to be the case. So that is really very good news indeed. So that's basically what happened this morning, and that's why it happened. And feel free at any stage during the course of the morning tomorrow, we'll be on drive, to discuss it. If you want to ask any questions about it, please feel free to do so. But just understand that conservation land, especially in South Africa with our troubled past, is highly contested. There are a lot of very poor people in this country, mainly because of our turbulent past and for various other reasons, of course. And a lot of those people live on the boundaries of this iconic wildlife area known as the Kruger National Park, and of course all around Zimbabwe and Mozambique, where the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, which the Kruger is part, extends. So we're part of an 8 million hectare of wildlife wilderness wonderland, and of course part of that wilderness is the human population of magnificent South Africa, beautiful Mozambique, and iconic Zimbabwe. So that's the story from today. This afternoon, well, was pretty quiet. We saw a hippopotamus languishing in the mud. A couple of buffalo later on, not a great deal else really. We had some interesting chats about some sausage trees, and thank you Jeffrey in Texas for making me look like a complete fool by pointing out that we do actually have one on Djuma next to the pump house. You knew that from Texas, I didn't know it from, well, 300 meters from the pump house, so thank you very much for that. I will go and investigate for further sausage trees. Big thank you to Brian on camera today. Thank you, Brian. Would you like to show your thumb?
I would like to.
All right, there is Brian's thumb. Hello, thumb. Big thank you to Tara and Nikki in the final control for all of their patience with the radios that have been a little bit difficult on Wendy, but we managed to get through it in the end. And of course a big thank you to Jamie, and Scott was on camera on Jamie's car. He's a very good cameraman, as old Scott. Big thank you to them. Mostly thank you to all of you. Continually I'm amazed at your knowledge, at the breadth of your interest, and I wish Patty a very safe and happy trip to the Sabi Sands, and I hope it turns out to be everything that you hope it will be. We will see you tomorrow morning during the magnificent African dawn that is bound to break somewhere around 5:45. Bye bye, keep safe wherever you are in the world, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Bye bye.